How are you? Good. Yeah, I'm hanging in there. Hanging in there. All right, TAs, whoever logged in first has my hosting rights. Send them on over. Send them on over. And the way that I check that is I click on participants and oh, it is showing me as the host. Well, hallelujah. TAs, if you would keep an eye on the waiting room, those of you that are also signed on as co-hosts, just keep an eye on the waiting room so we can get the peeps in, please. Cinco mucho. Hannah, will you do a mic check for me and just take yourself off mute really quick so I can see if I hear you well enough?
Yeah, how's this?
Ah, it's perfect. Thank you so much. It's very nice to see you today.
It's great to see you too.
Oh, your hair is getting long.
Yeah, it's on the grow.
Yeah,
We've
that
been cutting
happened.
each other's hair recently. It's been really fun learning how to do.
Well, I actually went to a barber and had my
Ooh,
fade redone last week, so
it
it
looks
was great.
great.
It feels good. It feels really good. All right, all right. Thank you. You can go ahead and mute back up. Hit play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
We're just experimenting. We'll just prototype. I'll keep an eye on it as well. Turn our recording back on now that we've gotten through just a few of the logistics, and we can get this party started. The smoke is getting to me. Please don't feel vulnerable by my clearing of the throat and doing what I do all day and teaching and everything else like that. Like when I get sick, the first thing to go is my voice, just because I use it so much in everything that I do. So when things like atmospheric dust and particles increase exponentially, it really affects my vocal cords. So I only have to clear my throat when I'm talking a lot. So when you're hearing that, please don't worry about me. I'm okay, I promise. Okay, well, it is awesome to have you all here. I am going to do something a little funky, a little different here today. I'm still trying to figure out because last time you guys didn't see all of this Zoom stuff. The smoke is getting to students. Yes, thank you, Skylar. Seamus, if you are in proximity and you can hear me, would you come out here and help me figure out how to get Zoom off of the big screen? That would be wonderful. Okay, I don't think he's listening to me. How do I? Seamus. No, that's quite all right. What am I missing here? I don't want everything over here. I'm supposed to be able to slide things over here and have it just be, show me, Obi-Wan. Display starts with D. Oh, okay. Well, don't play with me, brother. And what do we change it to? Uh-huh. Okay. 1, 2. Why are you guys making me learn things? Can I just use my bandwidth for psychology? Thank you, Seamus. No, I appreciate it. I do. I really do. Oh my gosh. It's not too hot messy. It just feels that way. Okay. So I'm sending this over here. So that's what we all get to have. And then I'll set it up so this is what Zoom is recording as well. And hop into my screen share. You guys, I really hope that the powers that be, when they decide to do my evaluations, that they don't throw in all the technological bullshit that I ran into, that we've all ran into. So it's hurdles, it's hurdles, it's hurdles. Okay, well, welcome back, right? I mean, we're in our 4th week, folks. I don't know if you've done the math. That means that we only have 6 weeks left. So next week will be halfway. Like if I can get mind blown, that's pretty ecstatic. One of the things that I'm going to be working on when it comes to this here, I'm just going to have you guys answer these questions, and I'll spell arena correctly, and We'll get this done. Oh, that's so annoying. Yes, thank you very much. We've already got that one in there. Thank you. Okay. So now, right now, you guys should be seeing on your polling. I just want you to let me know where you're at. If you're physically in the arena or if you're remote. I know that when they count the people when they come in, but I would like to know, because it's very difficult for me to tell proportionally how many people are physically in class. And I think that that's relevant. I know a lot of people bounced out of being here face to face just because of the logistical nightmare that we are having with Wi-Fi. Hopefully you all saw the announcement that I posted on Blackboard. If not, go check it out. The tech people discovered that there was yet one more way to be efficient and effective in getting yourself lined up in the course and set up with the Wi-Fi here. So about housekeeping, well, weekly summaries for week 3, those were extra credit, and we have graded those. We are in grading those right now. I think that for the most part, a lot of you really identified with the space and time that you needed for the unit essay. Remember that one time when I told you it was due on Friday and the syllabus said Sunday and there was all that confusion, and then I get to make it to Sunday? And I would love to pretend like I did that strategically and that I did that to ensure that I would get more student submissions. When I looked to see how many students had submitted on Friday, and I saw how many students had yet to submit, I went into the syllabus and I was like, oh, well, it says Sunday here, and I said Friday in class, and I put Friday on the assignment, but we're going to make it Sunday. And thankfully, 50 more students decided to actually submit their essay. Which I was wicked grateful for. And I saw a lot of people rewrite their submissions. And I haven't compared many of them just because, and looking at them and getting them graded, but I'll start comparing your attempt 1 and attempt 2. And I hope that that extra time really empowered you to submit something much better. And I'll take that into consideration on the due date for the next round of unit essays, if having it until Sunday demonstrated a significant improvement, or I don't know how to say it. I'm going to go ahead and end polling. So if you just got in here, you should see a polling set up right now. I just want to know if you're physically in class or if you are. It's showing that I still have 9 people who have not completed the survey. Now it's showing that I have 8 people that haven't completed the survey. So I'll keep waiting on that one. Research up to date. Holy smokes. Let me show you what I just saw. I went into studies, put it in, boom, there's 5 credits right there. You could literally be done with your research right now. All you have to do is sign up and sign in, and you are golden. They've got 5 studies here. Now, I haven't read all of the requirements. Some of them, I don't think we have any gender requests, right? Remember when we talked about generalizability and random sample sizes and things like that? But we now have 5 studies up. So there is no good reason for you not to get your research completed at this time, now that we've had enough studies posted. Be sure to get in there and get it done. Having a 10-week session doesn't really cramp our style. It actually sets us up for a lot of success for the semester. One of the reasons why I was interested in having a 10-week session is that, remember those Fs that I showed you of those students that would just drop off the face of the earth? They would actually start dropping off after the 8th week. And so my thought was that if I offered a 10-week session, I'd have fewer failing grades because I'd have more, students will have been able to maintain and actually finish the class if I finished in 10 weeks. So I had some people ask, why would I offer this in 10 weeks? And that's exactly why I would offer this in 10 weeks, is to ensure, see if I can catch more students and with no other reasonable explanation, save them from themselves, because studying can be fatiguing. And so that was the reason behind having a shorter semester. But yeah, research, get it done. Like, you could be done right now with all your research credits and you could submit. I will get now that we have had 5 credits posted, I'm going to have Devin email me and remind me to post the links for you to submit your summary. So you could submit your research summary right now and be done with it and have those points. I'll grade them as you submit them. So you can just count on those points and be done with that. One of the things that I wanted to point out is if you're on you're all on your computer right now. That was a silly statement that I was just going to make. Log into Blackboard and go to your gradebook. Now, up in the sort of just above your grades along the sort of shaded right-hand bar, I don't have student view because I can't show it to you, but you'll see this gradebook organization. Some of you have it by due date, some of you have it by grading. There should be another value there. Will you turn your computer for me so I can see it? Okay, I don't see it there. Yeah. So yeah, there should be a drop-down menu and putting it in course order. Did you see that? Was that an option in there? Folks, put it in course order because this will show you the gradebook as I have the gradebook organized, which is all of the functional, all of the functional, all of the, now I can't even think of the word, all of the summative, thank you, and all of the formative. I just could not think of that word. If you do that, then it'll straighten out your grade book. So it won't be all this wonkiness. It'll put everything together. And what I'll do in the next couple weeks, because technically next week is our midterm, right? That's the middle point of the semester. I'm going to post a practice midterm for you so you can sort of see what the final's like. It's not going to be points contributing, so it's not even going to be extra credit. It's just going to be if you want to check it out. And I'm also going to update our grade book with a total column for summative and formative, because that's how we break down our grades. So then that way you can really start keeping track of how you're doing. Were you able to find that? Yes, yes, I just couldn't, like, you have, oh, you went in a totally different way. Can I show you a better way to do this? Go ahead and click on your Blackboard, my main Blackboard page, but I always recommend going into your class and doing that. Okay, TAs, do we have any questions about research, essays, weekly summaries, gradebook organization? Any questions popping out at the in the chat that I could address?
One person asked what a research summary is or what that should look like. I think there's some details on Blackboard, but if you want to talk about that a little.
I think that's an awesome question. A research summary is just that. What did you do? What did you like? What did you learn? If you want to talk in however long you make your summary about how you think research is the dumbest thing ever, you can do that and still get credit. It needs to be an authentic representation of your experience, though. Don't blow smoke. I don't need smoke. There's enough of it out there in the atmosphere. I don't need any more. Okay, just be honest, right? Maybe there was one question on one survey that you were just like fixated on and you wanted to understand what it meant. Do that. There's no length requirement. There's no APA formatting. It really is just a summary. Now, you can't tell me research sucks without giving me any supporting evidence. So, right, be mindful of that. I've seen students submit as few as 2 paragraphs. I've seen students submit as few as, 6 sentences and make it one nice beefy paragraph. But just tell me how you feel about it. Let me know, okay? Let me know. That was a great question, Hannah. Thank you.
One other real quick that we had, I think some people are wondering how they might calculate their grade right now to figure out how they're doing overall in the class.
Awesome. Okay, so when you're in your grade book, you see the total points that you earned and you see the total points possible. You just add those two up and divide, right? So you divide the points possible by your points earned and that'll give you your current percentage. But you can go ahead and go in there and add it up. Same way you would calculate any percentage earned. I don't weight anything in this class. Points are points. That's why some things are worth 5 points and some things are worth 25 points. I think a point is a valuable thing. And so I assign 5 points to things that are not as valuable as something as 25. So there's no weighting to take into consideration or anything else like that.
It looks like there's also a couple of questions regarding where students might find the exit ticket. Would you mind reminding people where to find that?
You bet. The exit ticket is going to be located through the days folder. So today, let me get back to my Blackboard. Today is Monday, and it is the Monday of a new unit, which is wicked exciting for me. So we're in psychological science now. Pardon me, we are in human condition now. And we're in week 4. So you just go to the current week, and then you click on the days folder. So today's Monday. You see right here that this is a listing of all the things that are in the folder. You select Monday. And as you page down here, because this is shadowed, right, it says item is hidden from students and will be available today after 2:45 p.m. So once class ends, this will become available, and you click on this link. I double checked it to make sure I didn't somehow give you guys editor access, which was, I have never seen that before, in a student link. But you click on this link, you would complete the survey, and then you use this to submit your screen capture. All right? Happy to help, happy to help. Oh, one of the things that I wanted to be sure to point out, I just love this slide. Devin did such an amazing job. Wednesday, in your Explore, right? I'm a little bit concerned that not all of you are getting the required stuff done. So just make sure that you check out this summary of Becoming a Learner. This is a book, some of you might actually be using it in your UF 100 class if you are in UF 100 right now. But it is a summary of a book that we're going to be talking about on Wednesday, okay? Remember, Explore is all that stuff that you need to look at to get ready. Required is what everybody needs to do, and then opt-in is choose at least one. I don't think we've had more than choose one. Anything else, TAs, that you're seeing that I can help with?
There's somebody just asked a question about the research study option, and it's saying that it's taking them to a different page, but they're not 100% sure where to go from there.
Okay, well, where it should be taking you is to the SONA systems, which is this page. You log in and create an account. All of that information is laid out here for research. I got to the SONA systems page by clicking on this. So here it tells you how to request an account, what you enter. You have to use your Boise State ID. You have to use your Boise State email. You can't use anything else. Okay, and then here are some troubleshooting suggestions. And if you get into anything thick, go ahead and email the researcher. All right, I'm going to take one more housekeeping question, and then we're going to champion on and start talking about memory. Okay, maybe we don't need any more questions. That is awesome. So I'm sure that a lot of you realized that I reorganized the order of the book, right? I mean, that should be evident already. For some reason, our book talks about learning before memory. And you have to have memory in order to learn. So it just makes sense to me conceptually to talk about memory first. And this is by far some of the most basic, fundamental, but fascinating stuff. Like the applicability of the content that we're going to talk about this week in regards to memory and learning is awesome, right? It's everything that you're doing. Like if I could teach learning and memory before I taught the fundamentals of, psychology and old white dudes and states of consciousness and things like that, I would. Because starting off with this is the sweet spot. And you guys have seen when you get to the expand content for this week, you're going to see that we've got a lot of information on study tips, memorizing, test taking, lots of really helpful information. We wanted to make sure that you were actually getting to see how this science is utilized. For today, right, at the end of today's experience, you should understand the process of encoding and recalling, right, specific to your life experience. And then at the end of this unit, you should be able to articulate how, right? We'll probably get to this on Wednesday, but how memory influences learning. Now, here are some questions left over from the content of last week. And I forgot my clicker, so I can't walk around. I got to stand right here. What happens when our basic needs are not fulfilled, right? When we don't have the biological stuff taken care of. I think we all know what it feels like to go hungry. I know we all know what it feels like to be thirsty from time to time, to be sleep deprived. Okay, it starts to shut down efficiency processing. We start to become less effective participants in our environment. When you're sleepy, your reaction time slows down, so you become a dangerous driver. When you're dehydrated, you can actually become cognitively impaired. Okay, when you're sleep deprived, you can have hallucinations. So taking care of those basic needs, right, those basic physiological needs, it is absolutely central. It's central to your success. Can I provide more examples of different theories of emotional processes? Now, because I don't get to ask this student a follow-up, I'm not entirely sure what else they mean. There are the theories that we talked about, Shacker, Singer, Cannon, Baird, and James Lang, seem to be the three most prevailing theories, two of which we don't really use anymore. We primarily use Shacker, Singer, the two-factor model, where we believe that there's a physiological component and a cognitive component activated at the same time after a stimulus. And then we have an emotional experience. That seems to be the one that has the most support. But now there are hundreds of theories on emotion, okay? Different types of emotion, right? I told you that there were 6 universal expressions of emotion, but there is just a massive amount of literature that breaks down all the variations of emotions and positive and negatives and nuances. There are hundreds of them. There are some people that think that there are 1,500 different emotions because they're unique combinations of all the other ones. So there are lots. I can't provide any more examples off the top of my head, though. Which emotional theory is most widely accepted today? Shacker and Singer's, the two-factor theory, seems to be the one that has the most credibility. Why was Maslow's hierarchy of needs not completely correct? Well, the needs pyramid is really instructive, right? It tells us how to prioritize things. It tells us how biologically, evolutionarily, and intuitively we should prioritize. Like we should prioritize our basic needs and then move on to things like safety and security, and then love and belongingness, and then self-esteem, and then self-actualization. But what we run into is that Maslow really believed that you couldn't move past those physiological needs. Like you couldn't move into safety and security if you had a physiological need that went unmet. But we know today, and we have examples across our culture all the time of people putting themselves, right, in harm's way, right, for a loved one, right? So that would be us putting love and belongingness before safety and security. How many of you have had a sleepless night because you were listening to a friend, or you were there trying to problem solve with somebody, or, you know, like we mix and match along that all of the time. How many times have people not ate food, right, in order to increase their self-esteem? So that's kind of where we take an issue with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that, you know, it's a great way to think about it, but it's not the most complete accounting for needs. Can oversleeping affect you just as much as lack of sleep? It does affect you, but in a different way. A lot of that has to do with cortisol levels. For any of you that like to take naps and take a nap in the middle of the day, and then when you wake up, you need like caffeine or a carbohydrate. It's that stimulus that you need in order to get yourself moving. And so messing around with that seems to not be the best idea, especially for things like cortisol level, which is stress hormones. It also has you making not the best of choices when it comes to foodstuffs, because you're going to default to those really simple carbs so you can have energy, which does nothing else for your body but give you a little bit of go-go juice for a short period of time. So it does not affect you just as much of a lack of sleep, but it does have negative impacts. Can sleep deprivation? Yes, sleep deprivation can cause hallucinations. Absolutely. Is adrenaline associated with stress? Yes and no. Oftentimes we have an adrenal response that gets us activated and engaged, right? It's part of that sympathetic nervous system that is like, let's do this. Okay, but then what has sort of greater consequence, like adrenaline fades, like it's a fast burn, right? It's a fuel that gets burned up really, really quickly. What we have that seems to have the greatest consequence to ourselves physiologically is cortisol. It's a hormone that's kind of like an adrenaline chaser. It shows up a little bit later in your bloodstream than adrenaline does. But what cortisol does is it actually decreases memory functioning. It complicates kidney functioning. It increases abdominal fat. There are a lot of consequences to cortisol. So yes, you can adrenaline can be part of a stress response, but the hormone or the chemical agent that seems to be the biggest contributor to the consequences of stress is going to be cortisol. And that is, I mean, relatively new science as far as physiological science goes. We had a few more questions. What are the best techniques to increase arousal primarily before physiological activities? Oh, it's funny because when I first read that, I read it as psychological activities, and I was going to say do physical activities, right? Like before you go out to make a presentation that you're really nervous about, bounce around, jump around, right? Get that adrenaline pumping, get that, you know, your body ready in an activated state. But for physiological activities, like if it's a performance focused thing, I would say maybe even meditation and contemplation. That can shift arousal, right, and move you from a state of anxiety and stress towards higher performance. But other than that, I don't think I have a full answer to that question. That is a very good question. Just so you know, one of my TAs sets these up. I don't pre-screen them. I did edit one just for punctuation or languaging, but I don't screen them. If performance increases as arousal increases, why do I perform so badly when I'm very aroused or nervous? If we go back to the optimum arousal theory, I got to stand over here so the people see me. So when we go back, right, we have time and we have arousal. And so we reach this thing called the asymptote, which is this top form, where any increase in arousal at this point is going to decrease our efficiency. So arousal does help with performance, but we all have that sweet spot. It's very independent for all of us, and it's context dependent. Once we pass that sweet spot, we can become really ineffective. Are states of consciousness generally something that you can't control besides psychologically induced ones? No. You can, the spontaneous ones you can do, and the physiological ones you can do. Physiological, I mean, take drugs. Spontaneous ones, maybe a little less control over that, but you can give yourself permission to daydream, right? Just zoning out and kind of encouraging it for yourself. So I think you can, exercise some control in all those different states of consciousness. Are emotions different from physiological response? Yes. How are emotions created or felt or identified? That's an amazing question. And I think we're actually going to talk about something related to my response to that question this week. I think that our emotions are learned. You know, our parents model something, and then we pick up their response patterns. And it's more complicated than I'm making it, but just to keep it simple, I think that there's certain patterns of interacting with our parents throughout our childhood that have us set up with certain expectations and response patterns. And those led us to kind of build emotional habits. And a lot of times people in their adult life are working on breaking those emotional habits. Yeah. Felt or identified, I think that that's really important because if we think about Schachter and Singer, since they talk about having cognition and physiological arousal happening at the same time, and then those lead to the emotion. The point that Schachter and Singer were trying to make is that it's really this cognitive labeling, because physiologically, joy and fear for me are the exact same thing. My heart rate is increased, my pupils are dilated, my digestion is decreasing, I am perspiring, right? All of the things in my body that say activate, activate, activate are happening in joy and fear. It's the value of the context that I assign, right? It's the value of the situation that sets whether or not it's joy and fear that I end up in. So yeah, I think, you know, I think that that Schechter and Singer thing is really important and helps us understand that quite a bit, very effectively. Oh gosh, you guys, those are great questions. I appreciate your thoughtfulness on those. I'm going to send you guys into some breakout rooms. What I want you to do is I want you to share a story of a memory that was from a fun life experience. Now I'm going to send you guys out into not big groups. I'm going to send you out into smaller. No, well, we'll see, because we'll see how many people are. All right, we should all be returning, wrapping that up. Now, the reason why I had you guys break out into groups and listen to other people's memories is I want you to use the memories that you heard as we walk through and, for lack of a better term, reconstruct memory construction. I am going to, I love this. I love the model of the mind. And, you know, just because of, you know, all of the great opportunities in technology, I have to move the screen back over here. So I'll be moving it back and forth for a minute. But we're going to talk about the model of the mind. And a lot of you explored it, were able to write up some content about it. I'm going to go ahead and move that over and talk about what this is.
Can you screen share?
Yeah. I'm getting my screen set up and then I will happily share it. Thank you. Thank you. Here we go. All right. That one. That's the one I want to share. Okay. So here we have the model of the mind. Now, experience, encoding, decoding, right there, all the boxes represent so many different things. So I'm going to lay out for you guys what we do when we basically create a full diagram of this model of the mind. Now, this first box, if you want to go ahead and type into the chat what you think goes in that first box, that would be awesome. All right. Encoding. Okay. All right. You'd be wrong, but I appreciate it, right? When we talk about the model of the mind, how in the hell am I drawing white over here? I don't understand. When we talk about model of the mind, we are going to talk specifically about how we use this. And for some reason I cannot, there we go. My God. All of the technological for the life of me. All right, so the first thing we put in the box is actually, and I'm gonna label this out for you. Our first box gets short-term memory, okay? Short-term memory goes into our first box. Sure, this is kind of part of encoding. So when our textbook talks about encoding, storage, and retrieval, there are many, many different steps along the way for encoding. The first thing we have to have, or the first memory storage that we have, is sensory memory. But prior to sensory memory, we have to have, and please create this diagram on your own and label it with the full terms. I'm just using shorthand for efficiency. The first thing we have that's supposed to be an S and an I, that's sensory input. Okay, sensory input. Sensory input happens first. Okay, sensory input comes in and it is one of the ways, it's fundamentally necessary in order for us to do anything. We have to have sensory input that goes into that short-term, that sensory memory. So Sensory memory is in our first box, not short-term memory. Sensory memory is in our first box. Then we have sensory input that feeds into sensory memory. Now, sensory memory is tricky, right? Because traditionally speaking, those of you that are in this space, I just want you to yell out at me. How many senses do we have? 5, right? We all think about 5. Today, in our science, we actually talk about 8 plus. Okay? We have different sensory systems throughout our entire body. Sure, we have the big 5, right? We have auditory, we have olfactory, we have our taste buds, we have our vision, we have our sense of touch, right? And that's one of the things that informed Wilhelm Wundt's first psychological study. Taste, touch, smell, sight, sound. The 6th one that I typically tell students about is what we call proprioception. And that's balance. We have sensory receptors throughout our muscles and tendons and also in our inner ear that tell us where gravity is, that help us understand where this is. So when information is coming in, and it always comes in sensorily, right? For those people who say, oh, I'm an auditory learner, oh, I'm a visual learner, oh, I'm a kinesthetic learner, we've debunked learning styles today. What we have is sensory dominance. Right? You can actually learn doing any of those things. You have sensory dominances. You specifically have different sensory systems that you place more resources in than in others. Okay? You're not predisposed genetically or anything else like that. It's a habit that you've gotten into. That's why we've moved away from learning like styles like that. Instead, we want to provide you with as many different things as possible. This is one of the reasons why I opted into having a face-to-face class this semester, right? I'm a relational learner. I'm also a visual learner. I'm a context-dependent learner. All of that sensory information that comes in, right, that becomes part of that sensory memory is about the environment that you're in physically, who you're around, what does the chair feel like on your seat, what do you do just before class, what do you do while you're in class? All of this becomes part of your memory. How many of you heard a memory from somebody where they were able to talk about what it felt like emotionally, but they were also able to describe how warm it was, what the light was like, what they saw, maybe what colors were present? Granted, you guys didn't have a lot of time to go into a whole lot of detail, but when we bring something in, attached to it is all 5 of those systems that we typically talk about, in addition to 3 other systems that our culture doesn't talk about very much lately, but including proprioception, right? Where we are relative to gravity. And so all of that comes in. All of that right now is attached to your understanding of this moment. So all of that is information. And what happens is we get that information into sensory memory, and it is not there for long, okay? Not there for long at all. Very, very seconds, tenths of a second amount of time for some of our sensory systems. And what happens is we take that information in and we have to decide right then, is this relevant or is this not relevant? Do I need this or do I not need this? Now, unfortunately, this is where all of our biases come in. Our biases that are born from previous experience, however poorly informed. But if we're walking down the street and we see somebody walking towards us, right, and they have a long trench coat on and they're walking rather stiffly and it's warm outside, okay, our brain takes in that sensory information. It says, is this relevant or is this not relevant? And then moves on with it. Make a decision. Okay, most of that doesn't stick around. The people that cannot filter that have a special designation in our culture. We call them on the autism spectrum. The people that struggle to filter out that sensory information and take in all of the information all of the time and deem it all relevant are the ones that have sensitivity to sensory stimuli. Okay? Or maybe they have the next evolution in sensory processing and they're more effective than some of us. But because they're different, we think it's wrong or aberrant. So all of this information is coming in. It lasts tenths of a second in some sensory systems. And then what do you think we need in order to get something to move from sensory memory into our second box, which is short-term / working memory. And I'll explain to you why we put the slash in there. And my handwriting is a lot better than that. I just can't write on the screen. So I know, so many excuses. What do you guys think? What do we need? Consolidation, okay. I think they look like they need to see a doctor and not a psychologist. Okay, all right, bottom of a light bulb. Oh, how funny, you guys are talking about the picture on the PowerPoint. Okay, all right. Let's answer the question. What do we need in order to get something to go from sensory memory into short-term memory? What do we need? Rehearsal. Thank you, Maddie. Focus. Okay. Thank you, Brady. Attention. Thank you, Kai. Excellent. Attention is exactly what we need, right? We have to pay attention in order to move anything along in this system. Oh my God. You guys, you know I'm writing with the end of a pencil eraser. That word right here is supposed to be attention. I know. I specka the English. I really do. Yeah, you got to pay attention. Okay? If you don't pay attention, it's not going to end up in short-term / working memory. It's not going to happen. Okay? So right now what I want you guys to do is I want you to, in the chat, write what color my mask is. Is it blue facing or white facing right now? Did you pay attention? Right? Is it blue facing or white facing? Let's see how you did. Why? Is this just gaslighting us? I'm not entirely sure what you mean. I hear you laughing up there. I know what gaslighting means. Okay, purple. Thank you, Austin. I gave you the choices of blue or white, and you choose to go with purple. Okay, respect. Okay, there we go. Right? Did you get it right? Some of you got it wrong. Right? Even though it's something that you've seen, even though it's something you've been exposed to. Okay? You have to pay attention. You thought it was a trick question. Okay, thanks, Brady. You have to pay attention. If you don't pay attention, it's not going to make it into that short-term / working memory, and that's why you guys couldn't recall it, because it didn't go anywhere. So in order to pay attention, so if you're studying and you're like, why can't I get this? Why can't I get this? Why can't I get this? You have to think about where your resources are going. So right now, some of you have Zoom open on your screen, right? So you can listen. A lot of y'all got your social media up, you got your email up. All of that is pulling your attention, right? It's moving that away. You have to pay attention in order for anything to make it into that short-term / working memory. All right, so our last box, Kai, we could discuss the study with the gorilla passing the basketballs. And that study is about attention and about how, right, similar to the mask experiment that I just did with you guys, if you're not attending to it or if your focus is in one area, you're going to miss a lot of other things that are happening. I don't know how many times we've been surprised by people doing stuff or creating experiences. What does that LM stand for? Go ahead and just pop it into the chat. Just so you know, when I'm normally, thank you, yes, long-term memory. When I am in a classroom full of 250 people, the people talking to me all at the same time, it doesn't scare me. I miss that energy a little bit. So what do we have to have from short-term memory into long-term? What do we need to do here? What has to happen? Go ahead and give me your guest in the chat. Rehearsal, okay. Rehearsal, repetition, sleep. Yes, sleep is one of them. Repetition, rehearsal, okay. What we actually need and what we do here is encoding, okay. Some of you guessed that sensory memory was encoding, right? Because it's sort of the beginning of our storage, our long-term storage process. So you got to get the information in. Like, how many different ways are there to encode? I just told you that all of your sensory information goes in whenever any of the information shows up. So if I were to tell you, and I always tell my students this, if you intentionally, right, chew the same kind of gum when you come to class that when you study, you're going to have better recall on the test if you're chewing that gum, because that sense of smell and that sense of taste are part of the memory that goes with the content. Okay, the structure of the uncomfortable stadium seats that you're in, or maybe the cushy pushy bed that you're sitting on if you're sitting at home. All of that also gets encoded. So when we talk about encoding and we're getting that information in, you want to put as many tethers onto that information as possible. This is why we ask you guys to make personal references. This is why I asked you to share a personal memory, and here's somebody else's personal memory, is so that now those personal memories become part of the data. And you can use that information in order to recall it. Okay, and that recalling is the arrow that brings that information out of long-term and puts it into the same holding pattern as our short-term, but now we have a new name for it, and that new name is called working memory. Okay, so we recall right here, the information goes into long-term. Later on, we bring it out of long-term, and that goes into our working memory. It's only short-term once. After we pull it out of long-term multiple times, it's always working memory. It's short-term only coming in once. Now, short-term memory, we know that it's limited in how many bits of data. Like, you can hold 7 plus or minus 2 bits of data. And you can only hold on to information in short-term memory for about 30 seconds without actively using it. You know, like the rehearsal, what you guys were mentioning, that allows it, you had mentioned rehearsal as if that's what gets it into long-term memory, and that's not what gets it into long-term memory. Rehearsing is what you're doing when you're holding that information into short-term. You want to study well for yourself. What you want to do is you want to practice putting those things into long-term and then pulling them back out. Practice pulling them back out. Don't sit there and practice with flashcards, right? Repeatedly. After you go through your flashcards maybe once, maybe twice, put them away and then look at them later, giving yourself some time and distance so your memory, that short-term memory, can kind of shut off. Otherwise, you're just holding it. You're not actually practicing recalling. And practicing recalling is so important because that's what we're looking for, right? If I'm a flexible educator in many ways. I would love to find a way for you guys to show me what you know that didn't involve you relying on your memory systems, right? That would be great. That would be really great. But I have yet to have a way with 250 people to adequately provide an assessment that does not use any multiple choice at all, right? I haven't figured it out yet. In order to test you, right? To see if you actually understand what we're talking about. One of the things that you'll notice on our assessments is that we really work to leave a blank on the test, right? So it'll say, Sally is an undergraduate student and she is interested in being a clinical psychologist. Sally needs blank degree in order to be a clinical psychologist. So we work on having you guys fill in the blank. That way we can provide you with lots of cues and clues to help you recall that information, right? We want to give you as much information as possible in order to empower you with being able to pull that information out of long-term memory. And honestly, when you approach your assessments and you use this science and you even use this language, there are some memory enthusiasts that use the mind palace, and there are some that use filing cabinets, where you can have everything organized for yourself based upon a topic in this very succinct visual system. Well, it's visual, right? So that's one of our sensory systems. Auditory, one of our sensory systems. Tactile, and it's not so much kinesthetic learning as one of the things that we get to do when we're manipulating things is we get to sort of build a 360-degree understanding. It's not so much just doing something with your body, right? It's building a relationship with the content that makes that memory system so important, or that learning approach so important. So we recall that information, and y'all mentioned this super fun dynamic of rehearsal, right? Pulling that information out. Oh, Jesus, this pencil killing me. Rehearsal, believe it or not, that's what that word says right there. Encoding, I think, is the only legible item on there. Oh. Rehearsal, right? Holding that information in there. So the first time a bit of information comes in, it comes first through sensory information, okay? You have lots of senses that are on point, and you decide within seconds, is this relevant, is this not relevant, moving on. If it's relevant, then I pay attention to it, right? I engage with it. I dedicate my sensory systems to that. And then from that, right, from that attention, it goes into my short term. And then if I decide it's short term that it really is relevant and it's something that I'm probably going to use later, I take that from short term memory and I encode it. Okay, and again, there are so many different ways to encode information. Please be sure to check out the different ways we do that in our textbook. I think, right, and the science bears this out every time, the most meaningful thing you could do with any information is make it personal. Because if you can find personal relevance in something, you've already attached so much more content to it, and you'll be able to recall it with great efficiency. So that's my 2 cents, having that personal connection. So that goes into long-term memory through the encoding. And then when it comes time to retrieve it, right, we recall it, right? We pull it out of our long-term memory store, and that becomes working memory, and we use it. Yes, you can use rehearsal as a memorization in, technique, but what it's not the rehearsing that allows you to encode it, right? It's the relationship that you're building with the content to encode it. One of the best ways to encode information is to teach it to somebody else. Try to explain it to somebody else, especially if that person's willing to provide you with some challenges and say, can you provide me with another example? One of my favorite things about teaching a live class is that you guys ask me questions, you know, or even just the questions that we got on the exit ticket. I get questions that push me to think, that allow me to get better and understand more of what I'm doing. So all that is wicked, wicked powerful. All right, we have some time. I would love to see any questions in the chat box about our model of the mind that we have here. Bradley, you are sassy. If you'd like to have a more conversational approach to help you with content, TAs. Thank you, thank you. Yes, yes, I think in-person discussion groups would be amazing for this class. I love that. I love, love, love that. And if any of y'all set something up like that and let me know, I can't promise this, but I wouldn't be surprised if you had a guest appearance from me. I would love to not have you all sitting in this room, you know, floors above me and away from me. So if you guys do end up setting up an in-person study group for the class, please let me know. I don't see any questions. What part of the brain does attention come from? Oh, so we have the mammalian part of the brain, which is very rudimentary, which gets our startle response, our, you know, oh my gosh, there's something moving in my periphery. This is one of the reasons why when I teach, I'm always moving, is because I know that's one of the ways that I keep your attention, because the predatory part of your brain wants to make sure that I'm not going to eat you. I know that sounds kind of funny, but you want to know where I'm at all times, because I'm this moving target. That's the reason why on websites, advertisements end up having something flashy or moving in them, because that's more likely to get your attention. You're more likely to pay attention to that stuff. So there's a mammalian part of our brain that where it can like grab our attention and it can get us. I also vary the volume, right? Because the volume, if I speak in a singular tone, which is totally impossible for me, but if I were to speak in a singular tone over a long period of time, you would start to tune that out. But the mammalian part of your brain says variety. Variety means differences, and differences is something I need to pay attention to. So varying all of those things really help. That's what catches our attention. Sustained attention, especially if it's difficult sustained attention, like trying to keep from falling asleep or trying to listen to somebody when you really don't want to listen to them anymore. That takes our frontal lobe, okay? So there's not just one part of our brain that uses that. We have to use our frontal lobe, the part of our brain that allows us to do hypothetical deductive reasoning. It involves our executive functioning, which is really one of the things that allows us to modulate our behavior. Which sensory inputs we transfer into our sensory memory. Sophia, here's the interesting thing, and we're learning this quite a bit from trauma research, that sometimes we can't control the associations that we create. People who have been in singular events that initiate trauma, or you know, and specifically we see this in PTSD. People who are struggling with that, they have different triggers, and that word is used excessively in our culture right now. And I don't mean excessively in a demeaning sort of way. It's just that it's lost its potency because it's so utilized. And I'm not saying it's not inappropriately utilized, but it's used quite a bit, so it's lost its potency. But triggers are sensory related, and they can queue up and recall a lot of threat related information that isn't exactly accurate. And so we don't have a lot of control over the sensory information that we input. One of the things that we even know from attentional research is this phenomenon called the cocktail effect, where if you're in a crowded room and Delaney and I are having a conversation, we're chatting, and Kaylin says, she's talking to one of the other TAs, and she says something about Dr. Henderson. I am going to hear that. I'm going to hear that, right? It's called the cocktail effect. Even though we're engaged here, there's a part of my sensory system that is always listening to everything else as much as it possibly can in order to assess information and ensure our survival. So I just, yeah, Sophia, I just don't think that we can really control that. Yeah. What do we know about divorcing long encoded associations that are no longer helpful? Whew. That is a lot of training, Neil. That is a lot of training that you have to go through, and you have to build new associations. So when we talk on Wednesday about learning theories, we're going to talk about how associations are built and some of the ways that we create them, and then some of the ways that we can counterbalance them or counteract them, especially if they have disastrous consequences. Well, we're at time, folks. They've asked us to end 5 minutes early every day. I don't know if you've noticed that we've gotten out 5 minutes early every day. Make sure and head this way, and I will joyfully, happily see you on Wednesday. And don't forget to complete your exit ticket.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know why it makes me so happy to
Thank
hear
you.
that. No, I'm great. Thank you. Yes, Zoom on Wednesday. Delaney's already given us a couple topics. Talon, Taylor, Kaylin, Elizabeth, Hannah, thank you all so much. You guys are awesome. I'll see you Wednesday morning.
Okay, bye.